Hey guys, it's Miharu. Let's talk a bit about Neopets. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, or just aren't old enough to have experienced it in its prime, Neopets is a virtual pet website where users can pick from a list of cute and crazy creatures to own as pets, as well as play a variety of minigames to earn items for them. This site was a pretty big part of my tween and early teen years. I would use it to message my friends, roleplay on the forums, and I even had some merch like trading cards and a game for the PS2. Although much has changed since my last login, the essence of what made the site special remains intact, and I look back on my time spent there quite fondly. It's a legendary piece of internet culture, and I can't think of a better time to discuss its impact than now. So let us dive into this retrospective celebrating 25 years of Neopian history. Founded and launched in the fall of 1999 by Adam Powell and Donna Williams, Neopets emerged from an idea aimed at entertaining university students while generating revenue through banner ads. Initially hosted in Guildford, the site quickly gained popularity, reaching 600,000 daily page views by Christmas of that year. In January 2000, businessman Doug Doering acquired a majority share and incorporated Neopets Inc., although the founders later grew concerned about the company's ties to Scientology. However, both have gone on record to say that no such content ever made it onto the site. Throughout the 2000s, Neopets was recognized as a highly engaging platform for children, with users averaging around 4 hours per month by 2005, showcasing a diverse demographic with a considerable adult user base. When Neopets first launched, it was definitely a rough start to say the least. If you check out the pets list from back then, it's honestly a bit comical.
Ew!
It's charming in its own way, but you can't help but laugh. The art styles were all over the place. It was like a chaotic mix of pop culture references and random designs thrown together. Which I totally get, I used to do that kind of thing too. But looking back, it is pretty funny. The world itself was also quite simplistic. You had your usual spots, a food store, a bank, a marketplace, an arcade, the standard virtual pet site fare. But at the time, it was unique and felt like an adventure. Once the 2000s rolled around, Neopets really found its groove. This is when I have the most memories of the site. The pets started getting revamps and began looking more like the recognizable creatures we know today. And there were a lot of geographical updates made to the world map too. It's crazy to see just how much the site has evolved. It's the colorful and vibrant artwork that actually drew me to Neopets in the first place. The style was very appealing and the characters reminded me a lot of something I would make, so it really spoke to my creative side. But what exactly did the site have to offer? What made it so captivating for players? Well, first and foremost, you have to realize that Neopets is fundamentally a game. Basically what you do is pick and name your pets and go exploring. The key to enjoying Neopets is participating in daily activities and other events to earn Neo points, which you can then spend on a variety of items. A big part of the fun is collecting rare items, especially paintbrushes. These allow you to paint your pets in different colors, making them stand out. My personal favorites, from an aesthetic standpoint, are the ones that change the entire design of the pets. Or at least, they used to, but I'll get to that later. One of the earliest additions to the site was that of pet pets, which are, you guessed it, pets for your pets. I loved these little guys, though I don't exactly remember owning any myself. Oh, and the paintbrushes work with them too. My favorite was always the mutant Nipter. Not too long after, they would also announce Pets. I don't think that needs explaining. Then there are the Faeries, which are basically your quest givers. They've been around pretty much since the beginning, and I remember when they looked like this. Not as cursed as the faceless versions that came before, but definitely not as detailed and beautiful as they are now. Two of the most well-known fairies are Elucin and Eudora, who will send you on timed scavenger hunts to find their lost items. I wouldn't recommend these games if you're just starting out because you most likely won't have the points to buy what you need or have any good stuff in your inventory to trade. Another way to look at Neopets is to imagine it like Pokemon. One of the most common methods of earning Neopoints and other prizes is entering your pets in the Battle Dome, where you can fight against the CPU or even your friends just for fun. But of course, if you want to actually come out victorious, you need a pet with good stats. And how do you ensure this? Well, if you don't want to trade for one, trading schools are the way to go. Sounds familiar, right? It can actually be pretty overwhelming for new players, which might explain why I didn't exactly play as intended. I ended up treating it more like a Tamagotchi, focusing on doing a few activities here and there so I could feed my pets, rather than engaging in the world of Neopia and its lore. Yes, lore. Something I wasn't even aware of for a long time were the Neopets plots. Major site-wide events that involve grand storylines told in the form of comics and puzzle solving. One such plot was the Lost Desert, and even though I didn't participate, I definitely remember the characters. Especially this one, Nabil. I thought she was so cool looking, and I would often come up with my own scenarios involving her and Tomos. I think I actually may have shipped them, and because I wasn't following the story, I had no idea Nabil married Jazan. But anyway, if you're curious about how to play the game or what newcomers can expect, I recommend these awesome guides by YouTuber The Amanda Files. I first discovered Neopets through a friend during the end of my elementary school years. Being the very early 2000s, this was not just my introduction to virtual pet sites, but also one of my earliest memories of the internet in general. I vividly remember the old layout and looking through the list of pets, each one cuter than the last. I found the designs incredibly appealing, and I couldn't help but feel excited when I explored the site, and even printed out a list of pets. Ironically, most of my time was spent developing my own Neopets-inspired content than engaging with the actual site features. I used to have a program on my old computer called Print Artist, which allowed me to create storybook-like pages that I would paste Neopets artwork on, crafting my own narratives around the characters. Again, mostly Nabil and Tomos. But when I wasn't clicking around random pages, you can guarantee I was scoping out the Neo boards and trying my best to involve myself in the community. I remember attempting to join roleplays, which led to some awkward experiences as I struggled to keep up with the conversations. However, this was all part of being a kid navigating the internet for the first time. It was also my main platform for messaging friends before I moved on to DeviantArt during my high school years. Every time I see these avatars, I get hit with a wave of nostalgia. Unlike most forums where you would just upload your own image, these icons acted as items of varying value. Some of them were actually awards for participating in events or completing certain tasks on the site, so if you spotted someone with a rare icon, you just knew they were cool. Even when I moved to DA, I still used some of those Neopets avatars, especially the one of the library fairy because cute girl with glasses, and this dark fairy one because goth aesthetic. I believe I had multiple accounts on Neopets, but the one I used most often was called Crimson Drake. The name was inspired by this tiny red drake figure that a friend of mine had, but unfortunately it was lost during summer daycare one year. However, to this day I still have the other four he gave to me, a red Shoiru, blue Loop, green Ixie, and blue Uni, which were actually my pets on the site. For those wondering, these figures actually came from the Meridel and Fairyland Deluxe portable players. During my time on the site, one significant memory stands out among the rest. Something Neopets is quite well known for is random events, which can either result in something good, bad, or just plain weird. One event involved a baby Bruce named Bucci, who would appear out of nowhere to zap unsuspecting pets into baby versions. As of 2014, he will always miss his shots, but back then it was different. I was unfortunate enough to encounter Bucci in the early days, and I'll never forget what transpired. The pink penguin fired his ray gun at my loop, transforming it into a baby. Now, some may not see the problem here. I just got a baby loop for free! But while it was undeniably cute, I felt a twinge of frustration. I wanted my pets to look just like the simple figures I adored, with their plain appearances. Now I had a different looking pet, and it bothered me. Keep in mind, I was probably around 13 when this happened, and the concept of value hadn't really occurred to me, but it was soon about to. In a moment of desperation, I went onto the forums asking if anyone wanted to take the loop or knew how to change him back. To my surprise, a flood of responses followed, with many people expressing their interest in my newly transformed pet. The realization that I possessed something that others desired shifted my perspective entirely. Initially, I wanted to get rid of the baby loop, but feeling its popularity made me want to keep it instead. I felt conflicted though, and I remember a few people getting pissed at me when I told them I had changed my mind. Looking back, I realize how silly my motivations may seem. I feel regret for having viewed my baby loop primarily for its perceived worth rather than for the joy it brought me. Yet I can't help but laugh at the memory today. It serves as a reminder of my childhood experiences, a blend of innocence, naivete, and the excitement of owning something that felt special. I would even consider getting a baby loop plushie to commemorate that time in my life and the simple joys it represented. But I'm not the only one with something to say about loops, so I'm gonna hand it over to another Neopets fan. You may know them for their incredible Five Nights at Freddy's and Super Mario Bros. Artwork, the one and only Faerie.
Hey Faerie here to talk about Neopets, of course. Well, going back in time a bit to 20 years ago, the summer of 2004, that was when I first started my journey into the world of Neopets, which was actually my first ever venture into the internet in general. I was only ever allowed to use the computer to draw or play computer games on CD-ROM, of course. I first learned about the website from my older cousin, and when I'd go to my cousin's house, I'd see her playing this website called Neopets, which was also simultaneously the time frame where McDonald's was releasing the 2004 run of the Neopets plushies in the Happy Meals. Those were the ones that came with the promotional trading cards as well. And my first one I ever got was a green loop, in which that would become my favorite Neopet species of all time. But yeah, that was the summer of 2004 when I became a Neopian. I was so excited about collecting the plushies, cards, and super happy when my parents said yes, that I could make my own account. I was so drawn to the characters, the Neopet species and colors. This is also something I've never seen before in my life. I'm like, wow, this is awesome. I loved the Neopian Times comics section, especially on the website. It's what inspired me to want to start my first ever comic series, The Loopies, which starred my 3 loop characters who were brothers, just going about everyday life, you know. I really wanted to send those comics into the Neopian Times, but being a 7-8-year-old kid, I didn't know how to get my hand-drawn comics into the computer, so sadly, the comics never saw the light of day back then. Anyway, fast forward to 2024, I figured it was time to introduce the Loopies to the online world after 20 years. Characters that they meant so much to me growing up, and I wanted to give them another chance, you know? Well, in January of 2024, in the special 1000th issue of the Neopian Times, they finally made their debut. It couldn't describe how happy it made me to see the Loopies finally make it, you know? And I now submit occasional Loopies comics to this day as a semi-regular Neopian Times series, which is what I always hoped for them when I was a kid.
Thank you, Cosmo. But we're not done. Remember that YouTuber I mentioned earlier? Well, I just happened to drag her into this thing too. Take it away, Amanda.
I started playing Neopets when I was probably 7 years old, and it was probably one of the first things on the computer that I learned how to do, like type in neopets.com. I can still to this day remember like sitting there and creating my first pet. I'm pretty sure it was a shoiru. Of course, like most kids, it was kind of hard at first, but it was just enough where it was a challenge and I was learning new things, and it gave me this sense of accomplishment and like responsibility and being a part of something that I'd never gotten anywhere before. I'd only been on the earth for 7 years, but still, it was like my first experience with having something of my own to really manage. I had like these pets I had to take care of, and I was making Neopoints, and I was just like learning how to play the games, and I started to like formulate my own goals, seeing all these other pets everywhere, like, oh my gosh, that one has a baby pet, like how do I get a baby pet? And I would say that Neopets was probably the first fandom that I ever was a part of too, the first like community where I was meeting people on the Neo boards and going on other websites like fan websites to look at Neopet stuff, and I loved the storytelling. I started getting into all the plots and reading all the comics and learning about all the characters, and that was what really gripped me. And then I had all my favorite characters, and I was just logging in every day to like see what was going on in a world that I felt like I lived in and was a part of. It was such a huge part of my childhood, such a formative thing in so many aspects of my life. I can't even describe it, but I just feel like it made me kind of who I am today. It's like one of the like formative things of my childhood. When I got to like high school and things started getting so busy and I started to have to think about college and all that stuff, I kind of fell off. But I feel like every few years I would just kind of slink back into it when I had nothing else to do, and it was always there for me. And granted, would change a little bit, but it would still remain the same in so many ways too, where I could still always recognize the website and I could still always like kind of find my footing and kind of eventually figure out where I left off and pick up and just have all these new goals and stuff again. And I've just been having such an awesome time, honestly.
As previously mentioned, Neopets began to skyrocket in popularity with each passing year, accumulating a massive audience. You could even say it became somewhat of an addiction. Yes, even with the threat of Scientology long since out of the way, they still tangled with real-world issues. In 2004, McDonald's introduced Neopets toys in their Happy Meals, which sent kids flocking to the site to create their own accounts. Now, of course, in order to feed their pets, players had to earn points by playing minigames, which included poker and blackjack. So, as you can probably imagine, one mom in Australia lost it when she found her 9-year-old playing online poker for his virtual pet, claiming McDonald's was setting her son up for a future of gambling addiction. Following this, Today Tonight aired a segment called Parents Not McHappy Over Pokey Toy. A pokey is a slot machine if you didn't know. And the message boards blew up with rumors that McDonald's might pull their sponsorship and that Neopets could shut down entirely. In the end, all the drama led to those particular games being banned for anyone under 13. In June of 2005, Neopets was acquired by Viacom. After the acquisition, the founders left due to creative disputes, and despite various promotional efforts, Neopets experienced a 15% decline in audience over the next couple years. However, it remained a popular site, with users spending substantial time on it. By June 2011, Neopets reported 1 trillion page views since its inception, reflecting its enduring engagement in the digital space. This is around the time I began to phase the site itself out of my life, but I do still remember a few key events. The introduction of the Zuitalk and Lutari, the aforementioned Lost Desert plot, and of course, The Darkest Faerie. This was an action-adventure RPG for the PS2, and boy was it fun, even if I never finished it. But Specs here has.
Thanks for having me, Miharu. The amount of hype my soon-to-be 9-year-old mind had for this game's release was unmatched at the time. Neopets The Darkest Faerie was, in a sense, inspired by Zelda and action RPGs of the time. You played as 2 characters, Tor the Lupe and Roberta the Akara, a knight and a wizard. It was a game I sunk many hours into as a child, often getting lost and stuck, so it did take me a few years to properly finish it. But it was such a blast that I never cared about struggling with it. I would absolutely love to see this game get brought back to the modern day. It deserves a second chance.
But anyway, there was a lot going on at this time that I wouldn't learn about until years later. For example, the Great Conversion.
There was so much that happened on the website over the last 20 years that I've been playing, but I feel there was one significant event that I feel most people can relate to was experiencing the 2007 site overhaul when they redid the Neopets style. They redid almost every page on the site. It was all new. It was wild to experience that. It was sad at the same time to bid farewell to the classic site we all grew up on. But, when you think about it, it's incredibly amazing to see how Neopets has grown and still thrives today after all these years, In
April 2007, the site layout was completely revamped, and a customization system was introduced for pets. While adding customizable outfits was a cool idea, it now meant all the pets shared the same standard pose, sacrificing the expressive art I cherished from the old unconverted designs. Now, even if you painted them a unique color like Darrigan or Moroccan, they'd barely change at all. Many users were unhappy with this decision, which would lead to the rise of the Neopets black market as the value of unconverted pets, or UCs, went up, as well as one of the biggest controversies in the site's history over a decade later. November 22nd, 2019 marked the event which would come to be known as Savage Saturday. In the early hours of the morning, a user dubbed UC Santa shocked the community by posting a list of over 700 unconverted pets in the pound, igniting a rush among players. UC Santa was soon banned for their antics, but before disappearing, they cryptically posted 28th December 2019, 8 p.m. NST, sparking both confusion and excitement. As December 28th approached, tension built in the community, with even inactive players returning for the event. But when the moment arrived, UC Santa's page updated with a mocking message, revealing it was all a prank, listing sites selling unconverted pets for real money. The forums exploded with posts quickly reaching capacity. UC Santa then claimed to be working for a black market Neopets site, Bank of Neopia, before vanishing completely and leaving everyone perplexed. This is just an abridged version of the events that went down on those days, but if you want a more detailed explanation, check out this video by Izzy's. But perhaps the best thing to come out of the Viacom era was the Altador Cup. In June 2006, Neopia's annual sporting competition launched to an overwhelming response, reaching over 10 million participants in its first year. This virtual sports tournament pitted teams from different lands against each other in exciting UU Ball matches. Players could join their favorite team and compete in various minigames to earn points, fostering a sense of community and friendly rivalry among Neopians. This event is also steeped in the lore of Neopets, with characters having their own backstories and relationships. This adds a layer of drama and intrigue that's more akin to a sports anime. For nearly 2 decades, the Altador Cup has remained a beloved tradition, drawing players back year after year to support their chosen teams and experience the thrill of competition. Jumpstart Games acquired Neopets from Viacom in March of 2014, initiating server migration that was plagued by glitches and performance issues. Though a majority of the original Neopets team would be laid off just a year later, Jumpstart committed to enhancing the platform with new events and improved stability. This came with its own challenges, including the Neopocalypse, in which the site went offline for a couple days for maintenance, and a major chat filter failure in June of 2015. I feel like that one is worth mentioning in a bit more detail. Neopets has always been marketed as a family-friendly space, which means it has super strict filters in place on the forums. If users so much as tried to sneak a swear in there, they'd usually find themselves banned. But everything changed on Sunday, June 28, 2015. Something went wrong with the filters, and with mods seemingly MIA, chaos erupted. For a brief moment, Neopets turned from a wholesome environment into a wild west of vulgar content flooding the forums. Admittedly, this wasn't due to a lack of staff, but rather technical issues during a server move. Nevertheless, the PR team jumped into action, and the site temporarily went offline again, leaving users to reflect on the unexpected madness of the day. This chaotic event would go down in history as the Day of Sin. By January 2017, the site had about 100,000 active daily users, but its viewership declined significantly by 2020, recording only 3.4 million monthly views. The transition from Adobe Flash to HTML5 was announced to address compatibility issues, but not all features were functional after this. A mobile app for the site was planned, but later scrapped in favor of a mobile-friendly browser version. And then there was the Neopets Metaverse. I won't go into what they are, and luckily the trend has pretty much died, but yeah, for a while there, Neopets hopped on the NFT bandwagon.
What is this shit? What's going on? Why don't they like it? We spent $250 million on this!
Announced in September of 2021 and launched in November that same year, Metaverse was, to no one's surprise, a complete and total disaster. It was such a glitch-ridden mess that even the crypto bros were left feeling frustrated and disappointed. Fortunately, this was over just as quickly as it started, as 2 years later, in 2023, with the impending closure of Jumpstart, it was announced that Neopets would be moving into a new era and leaving NFTs behind. On July 17, 2023, World of Neopia Inc. was established, comprising of team members from both Neopets and Metaverse. Following major developments, including a homepage revamp and the Tales of Descardia mobile app, Neopets reported its highest revenue since 2017 and increased its monthly active user base from 100,000 to 300,000 by April 2024. Notably, user demographics have shifted to an older audience, with many returning due to nostalgia. I myself made a new account for the first time in 20 years, and even recreated my original pets.
And even that was kind of fun, actually, because at first I was kind of, bummed out that I was going to have to just work my way up from the bottom again. But then I started really enjoying the process of having new goals and having a whole new outlook and actually knowing how to make Neopoints this time and things like that, and actually knowing how to use the internet so I could really engage in the community even more. And so ever since then, I've kind of just been watching Neopets Neopets like kind of pick itself up and become something new while still carrying all that old wonderful nostalgia that we love, and actually really making a huge effort to shake up the website and give us new lore and new activities to do and so many new things that are helping people to enjoy the game more.
Neopets is one of the most influential virtual worlds out there. Everyone wanted a taste of its success, which led to the creation of sites like Club Penguin, Moshi Monsters, and even more direct competitors like Subeda and Neopets, which has controversies of its own. The amount of sites popping up around that time with pets in the name was unreal, and honestly could be a video in itself. Hell, we might not even have Roblox today if it weren't for Neopets. It was one of the earliest pioneers in the digital world genre, and its impact is still evident today. Neopets did so much more than just provide a fun experience. It introduced the concept of social networks, interest-based communities, and operated one of the first digital economies. It taught a whole generation how to be savvy investors and even taught some basic HTML coding, which inspired many kids to become developers later on. It's wild to think how Neopets sparked the creativity of so many people who went on to create their own online games.
And back then, in the early days of the internet, there was just not a whole lot of places where kids could go do so many of these things in such a safe space, but it was also a place that was so weird and random and just so unlike anything else that I remember going and trying to find like other virtual pet games to play, and there was just nothing that hit all of those boxes like Neopets did. Overall, I look at all of the different aspects of Neopets that make it so unique, and I just don't think that this will ever happen again. I don't know how to describe it. It's like this perfect mixture of like so many things that have been curated over 25 years that you can't just make another Neopets. You can't just make another website that will ever be like Neopets.
Another huge aspect was art. The Neopets site was a treasure trove of visual inspiration, featuring colorful characters, intricate world designs, and a plethora of user-made content. Many young artists found their passion through drawing their pets and participating in art contests on the site. This creative environment fostered a generation of digital artists and illustrators who continue to credit Neopets as a major influence on their artistic journey.
Neopets' impact on my life was huge in many ways. To start, it was a big obsession of mine during my childhood, so much so that it was all that I ever talked about. As I mentioned earlier, I loved the art style on the website, I loved the artwork, just everything. All that I used to draw, like I would always be drawing Neopets, much to the probably annoyance of people around me having to deal with me yapping about it all the time. But honestly, drawing Neopets has really inspired me artistically as a young kid with a passion for drawing animals already. Back in 2004 was when I drew the first personified version of myself that I would, use to depict myself in my artwork back in the day. It was a Luke version of me. He's evolved so many times over the last 20 years, but he was always a Luke at heart, to be honest. It was always there, a part of him. So Cosmo pretty much wouldn't have existed if it hadn't been for Neopets.
It also encouraged me to start drawing and trying to learn how to draw my pets, and I know that that is a huge thing that a lot of other people have gotten from Neopets as well, because of the way that people were sharing their art on Neopets, because they gave us a space to do that as well.
As Amanda said, we'll never know another site like Neopets. Even though it's still around, I seriously doubt it'll ever reach the same heights it did back then. Again, it reminds me of the Pokemon situation, something that's still going strong today, but that original 90s, 2000s Pokemania craze just can't be recreated. While Neopets is still a prominent virtual pet site, recapturing those glory days seems an impossible feat. And even though I'm struggling to adapt to how everything has changed, it's comforting to know that there are people like Faerie and Amanda who can still log in every day and find joy in it, making it a special part of their lives.
All in all, I literally couldn't imagine my life without Neopets in it. From making amazing friends through our mutual love for Neopets, collecting the Neopets trading cards, McDonald's plushies back in the day, trading them with others, playing like make-believe stories in the backyard with those Neopets plushies with my siblings. It's been such a joy being a Neopian for 20 years, and of course, a joy to celebrate the 25th anniversary. I've been actually working on a Neopets A to Z series in which I've been drawing every Neopet throughout the year 2024, and it's just a huge passion project. Like many others, I'm so glad it's been a part of my life for so long, that Neopets has brought us all so much joy, memories, inspiration, and friendships. I will always love Neopets, and that's a fact.
It always surprises me how I can be 31 years old and still so into this game that I loved when I was 7. Like, I'm still so into it. I do my dailies every single day. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Like, this is such a huge part of my life. It brings me so much joy because it just, there's just something so timeless about it. So all that to say that I really think that Neopets is such a rare thing. I know that there were so many times that it was so close to just not being able to make it anymore. And I'm so glad that it made it through those tough times, because I think that there's just something so beautiful about this weird little corner of the internet that we all come to, and we've all been coming to for so many years for most of us. And it's kind of just like become one of our homes that we can always go to and recognize and feel like we belong there. But yeah, I just can't believe it's been around for 25 years. That's insane. And happy birthday, Neopets. I love you.
As we celebrate its 25th anniversary, it's clear that this virtual world has left an indelible mark on millions of lives. Whether you're a longtime player or a curious newcomer, Neopets remains a testament to the power of imagination, creativity, and community bonds. It's not just a game or website. For many, it's a cherished part of their personal history and ongoing present, reminding us of the enduring magic that drew us in and keeps us coming back.